Thank you very much for joining us here today at Africa Utopia. My name is Hannah Poole and I'm a journalist and curator of the talks and debates at the Africa Utopia Festival, and I am really excited about this next session. Joining me for this in conversation, Mulatu is going to speak for a few minutes, and then I'm going to do an interview, and then there'll be plenty of time at the end for a Q&A, so don't worry, there'll be plenty of time for you to interact with the great man himself. But just to introduce Mulatu formally, Mulatu Astatke is known as the godfather of Ethiopian jazz. Started in the 1970s. I don't know how many of you were here last night, but we had a full, sold-out, standing ovation, incredible gig last night with Mulatu, so we are thrilled that he's here to join us to just say a few words today. I think the best thing is probably just to start by asking you to say a few words about how it all began, because I know music wasn't initially what you were doing. So how did you start in music?
Well, thanks so much for inviting me here. Well, how I start music. You see, we have a very big difficulty to actually to find out about our talents and about ourselves, usually in the most, the third world countries. Why I say this? You see, usually in developed countries, music, art, and theaters, usually they are compulsory and they are given the respect, like physics, chemistry, and maths. Now, that part of the world, usually this music and arts are not compulsory with that. And imagine how people could find out about their talents unless at a younger age, if you don't be able to experience all the subjects which is well known in the world, we have a problem to find out about yourself. So how I became into music, I came to England like in 1956. I went to high school in North Wales. And I came over here to study aeronautical engineering because I was good in physics and maths, and also I didn't really have the chance to find out about myself. So I come over here. I went to this very prestigious high school in North Wales called Lindisfarne College. So in that I was studying music, studying art, studying dancing, physics, chemistry, and maths, all to actually the same level, those subjects. And even though I was good in physics and maths because I wanted to become an engineer, and I was doing really good in music and arranging and also composing and writing music. So they suggested that completing the school at Lindisfarne, like I should proceed and continue by studying music. So that's how I discovered myself and what to be. So I just really found out how bad it is for not including in academic subjects those subjects what I just talked about. Imagine in Africa we have so great talented people, especially in music and art and dance and everything. So most of them, they didn't have the chance to know about themselves. They become engineers, they become doctors, and also become architects and this, but it's great. But what it is, if you don't know yourself, I don't think you really become an outstanding person. So we have a lot of them like becoming doctors, engineers, but they can usually become an average person. They don't become outstanding. So that's what really our problem is, and I could be a good example because I came here to find out what I should be. And here I am now, inventing music called the Ethiopian jazz in this world. And I studied at Berkeley College, and also I studied here at Trinity College of Music, studying classic music. From here I left to Boston, and at the Berkeley College of Music, where I've studied composition, arranging, and also performing. And so that's how I found myself and become father of Ethiopian jazz.
What was your family's response when you switched from engineering to music?
Well, we still have problems with the families as well, in Africa and most third world countries, because they're experienced and they never take these subjects very seriously. They always think like music is just enjoy, just to have fun, just to play. But over here or in America or everywhere, music is what we call science. There is no difference between science and music. Especially scientists usually mix chemicals to get the result. And when we're writing for 60, 70 people, we mix sounds. So exactly the same thing. So this is how he's taken this music as a science. And we're trying to explain to most of our African friends about how music is a science. And exactly, family had no experience of going to study music and art, like I said earlier. So they never had a respect for it. But now it's a different world, it's changing. Now they're enjoying, we have great musicians in Africa, in Ethiopia, everywhere. And I think we're getting to it now.
You were just 23 when you recorded your first album. How were you treated by the industry?
The first album was done in New York. Actually, after I left Berkeley, I remember I had a really fantastic professor teaching us. Always he used to tell us, be yourself. That was a great message to me. And we used to do a lot of analyzing work of Duke Ellington. We used to do analyzing of Count Basie, and also the great Gil Evans, a great man I always respect. Also George Sherings. We used to do a lot of research work, and we used to do a lot of exploring about themselves and how they become themselves and this and that. So that was always in my mind. So I left Berkeley, moved to New York. I formed a group called the Ethiopian Quintet. So that's where I started creating the Ethiopian jazz. As you know, our music is based on 5 notes. And we have 4 different modes to compose, arrange, and play our music. So the Ethiopian jazz is a combination or a fusion between 5 and 12, which is the 12 notes, like it is a 5. And it's not as easy as I'm talking about, because usually 12 notes are very complicated and very sophisticated scales. To fuse them with 5 notes, you really have to be careful so we don't lose the character of the 5 notes, the character of Ethiopian modes, and the feel of Ethiopian music. So it took me actually a while to put them together, and without losing the beat of Ethiopian modes. It took for a while, but finally I made it. And people were so very happy to listen to this type of music in America. And the first LP I made was in 1962, and it was a very successful. And it was on the radio, it was on televisions, and my group, we've been performing in different parts of America, and it was very successful. So that's how Ethiopian jazz took off.
Now you were in the States in the early 60s, which is, of course, was the time of the civil rights movement. Do you have memories of those activists?
Not really that much because I was in Boston area, I was in New York, and in Washington. Actually, I didn't feel it very much. I was so much involved to be myself. I've been working hard in music to be recognized, and as you know, Ethiopia was not really very much known in that area in the field of music, even though we have contributed so much for development of music in the world, which I will talk about it later. And I was so much concentrated, I had a lot of musician friends and was spending time writing and experimenting, recording, and traveling. So I didn't went through that experience that much.
After your time in the States, you went back to Ethiopia. What drew you back there?
Well, big problem, because to introduce something new to the public, something different music to the musicians itself was a problem. I even experienced it sometimes years ago to get off from stage because I did an experiment work. We have this very interesting instrument called the bagana with 10 strings. And that instrument usually used to praise God in the churches. And we had this great priest in Ethiopia who died for what he believed during the Italian occupation. So we have this great poet called Southbank, he wrote a beautiful play about him. And he asked me to write the score for the music, for the play. So I wrote that score for the play. And I used that instrument just to remember this because the guy was a priest. And that instrument has so much connections with our religions as well. So I used the bagana instrument. I fused it with piano, with guitar, saxophone, trumpets, and me on the piano. So we had this big festival in Ethiopia, I remember, and I was actually invited to perform on that festival. And at that time I had a very cute music with a great Ethiopian singer called They wanted me to perform that one, but I refused. I said, I want to do this one. And I went into the stage, and I had this great bagana player, and all the other musicians, and we started playing, started improvising, and people get really furious about that, because maybe, I don't know, because of the instrument, or because they didn't understand what I was doing, because that was Ethio jazz, which they haven't had a lot of experience of that type of music before. Even though we have like big bands, we even have a symphony in Ethiopia at that period. We have a symphony orchestra, big one. And so Ethio jazz was something different with improvising, exploiting the 5 modes to 12 notes, the experimenting I was doing. They didn't like it, so people start shouting and telling me to get off. But I never did that. I just keep on playing. And I finished, and that was one of my experience when I tried to show to the public, come up with different music, and that was my experience. So anyway, I've never stopped. I just keep on playing, keep on. Now I am here in England back again after many years. So always say, never give up, keep on trying.
This was obviously during quite a difficult time in Ethiopia. Did you ever feel that the mood of what was happening in the country might mean that you have to leave?
Never, you see. I say, how do you actually build a country? That's a very big question. You see, I think usually a country built through different professional peoples. And these different professional people are responsible for what they do in their country. I always believe I'm a musician. Ethiopia, culturally very rich and beautiful country. We have given so much for the development of modern music in the world. And I always believe I'm part of the Ethiopian, the cultural part of Ethiopia. And I always say, leave politics for politicians. So I just doing my part, my culture development, the music, cultural instruments in Ethiopia. So I never had any difficulty because I don't involve anything except writing, composing, and promoting my country.
You spoke a few minutes ago about the key ingredients of Ethio jazz. Have those ingredients changed over the years?
Yeah, and before, like, just say about 42 years, 41 years, I used to actually compose and write by using, we have this different modes. We call the digital and basso and anchoy, which is where our, the key scales are developed from. Those music usually with bass, like if it is in zeta, we stick and play in zeta, the melodies. Anchigoye is Anchigoye. So these days, like, I'm using all the modes at the same times, the same compositions. So that's what I call one step ahead. And so most of my compositions are based on all Ethiopian modes in one melody, and we sort of like also improvise using the different scales and different modes at the same time. So that's one step for Ethio jazz.
Great. You are, one of the things that's so great about the work that you do, and we saw this last night, is that you're clearly very passionate about sharing the space that you have with new artists. Your work has been sampled as well by some big names, Nas, Damian Marley, Kanye West. How do you feel about those collaborations?
Well, actually that really helped so much for my audience. Now I'm getting all type of audience, you know, I get jazz lovers, I get rappers, and I get young people from all over, and also the film I made with Jim Jarmusch, with Sharon Stone and Bill Murray, that also expanded my audience as well. So it's, I love it. It's so beautiful. It's an excellent experience, you know. And I also did a music for a film called Dare to Be Wild. It's an Irish film, a very interesting film. I hope it should be out in about 2-3 months. They are editing it in Hollywood now. So, and I'm sure that one will pull a lot of interesting audience. And we're just looking forward for it.
Has your when you look out when you're playing, when you look out from the stage, does what your audience look like? Has that changed over the years?
Yeah, it's I'm getting more and more audience, and I think they really start feeling and loving this music I call Ethio jazz, and it's been really very successful. I was like a day before we were playing at La Villette in Paris, so the audience is just too much. It was so beautiful. They accepted me so nicely, and there were also some great musicians also in the audience, and it's really building up, you know, like we play here at Glastonbury for 120,000 people. I was playing in Japan for the Fuji film, which there were about 140,000 people as well. So it's great, you know. I think we're doing really beautiful, and we're also introducing our country, Ethiopia, and maybe we'll talk later about our Ethiopian contribution to the modern musical instruments and the dances, and also the fashions as well.
Who do you listen to? Who do you listen to?
Well, when I started, I used to trying to find about myself. I used to listen to a lot of people, but now my heroes are the Darashes tribe from the south of Ethiopia, because they play a diminished scale as well. And we have two types of diminished scales, and like the great heroes like Charlie Parker and Debussy, and all these people use diminished scales. And these tribes from the south of Ethiopia, they use one type of a diminished scale, which is one of our great contribution to development of the science of jazz. So now, those tribes are my heroes, because even Ethio jazz is based on exploiting our 5 notes and combining it with a 12-note fusion. So my heroes are now the Darashes.
And could you say a few words about the improvisation process and what's happening in your mind when you're combining modern and traditional styles?
Well, that's the best part of jazz, is your freedom in music. That's what I really love about jazz music, that you can experience in my music. You can hear all kinds of elements in Ethio jazz. So, but the Ethiopian modes and character dominates. That's the whole trick. Even so, I use all kinds of elements from different parts of the world. The technique is not to be dominated. Always, Ethio jazz is always on top. Even I'm writing for big band, when I'm doing small band. So I had the experience writing for symphonies also as well. But always the modes and the character and the beauty of Ethiopia is always on top of it. So that's what makes jazz so beautiful, so interesting. We are free to do what we have in our mind, what we wanted to do. We are free. Like you hear it, if you jazz, you are in jazz. Sometimes you can be in Southern America, you can some Indian stuff, you can hear all West African rhythms, West African stuff in it. So the whole idea is the combination, how you combine this to one piece and don't lose the character and the beauty of Ethiopia. That's how Ethio jazz is putting together.
Thank you very much. Okay, well then we will close there, but please say a huge thank you to Mulatu.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to me. Really thank you. I've enjoyed it last night. Great audience. I'm so happy to be back after all these years from Lindisfarne back to England and greeted with those so beautiful audience. Thank you.